each year. So it's a pretty big competition. We are always very proud to represent the artists that are the fellows, and especially with this group here with us tonight. So, all right, so we're gonna meet our artists. Yay! So I'm gonna let you guys introduce yourself and maybe give us a little background of who you are, kind of where you grew up, where you came from, just to give us a sense of who you are. So we're gonna start with Marc.
Hi, I'm Marc Travanti. I grew up here in Kenosha. I went to I went to college at a couple colleges in Wisconsin. First at Parkside for a couple of years, and then I went to Whitewater, and then I went to graduate school at the University of Colorado Boulder. And while I was there, I was doing mostly sculpture and a little bit of ceramics. After graduate school, I moved to New York City to pursue a career in art. And my timing was good because it was the same time that the art scene was happening in the East Village. So I quickly became part of the East Village art scene. And within a few years, I was exhibiting work throughout the city at galleries and museums, and also had some shows in Europe. When I first got to New York City, my income came from building and repairing newspaper stands, working at a gym, and doing magic and juggling shows for private parties. I gave up those shows when I got an art teaching job, and I continued to work at the same school for more than 3 decades. During most of my time in New York, I also ran a small martial arts school where I taught karate. Came back to Kenosha in 2018 to spend time with my family here, and also look after my mother in her old age. I also talk about art, or you want to move on?
Let's move on, let everybody introduce them. We'll come
Okay.
back around.
Okay.
All right, Martha, why don't you take the floor?
Following that, I don't know. I was born in the back seat of a pickup truck, right? Actually, my second dog was. So I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin. And after graduating from high school, I went to school in Eau Claire, where I dived into journalism and art. Spent a lot of time, learning how to write, learning how to take photographs in a couple of different classes, and then also studying art, which was, those two things were very suited to me. I love writing and I love making art and photography. I did spend some time in Tokyo, Japan in my final senior year of college. And surprisingly, I went there with disposable cameras. I had to borrow cameras from my roommates when I was so overwhelmed by all of what I saw in Tokyo, which was incredibly fascinating. I fell in love with outdoor billboard advertising while I was there. So after graduating, I stayed in Madison for a few years, but then in about 1989, I went to Chicago. I took the camera that I got for a graduation gift and spent a lot of time among all the corporate advertising going on at Leo Burnett Advertising, which was extremely powerful to me. I mean, here I was among these blue chip clients all the time and working with the Marlboro men. And if you know anything about billboard advertising, a lot of it is photographs. On the Marlboro account, they were larger than life horses and cowboys and real cowboys. So it was just super thrilling to be with Tony the Tiger, the Pillsbury Doughboy, and the Marlboro Man for all of those years. I came back to Madison and didn't really do too much in the art world, but my husband took me up to Green Bay. And when I got up to Green Bay, it was something that was just so alien to me because it was so quiet and there was really no good jobs for me. And so I started dreaming about when I got a real job, I would be able to finally build a website, create artwork, and sell it. So in 2010, I did accomplish that. I built my website off of the iWeb app on my iMac and customized it with my PayPal. And that website really stood strong for about 10 years. And I was fired from a job. Well, not fired. I was laid off. I was laid off from a job. And I said, I have applied for so many jobs in Green Bay. I gave my husband my proposed business plan. I was going into business myself. And I started my photography business and started to do art fairs and that sort of thing. And I'm going to stop there because there's other questions that dive into some of that history. So ramble on.
Moving on to Nate Hunter. Give us a little of your intro.
I am from Kenosha, moved there when I was in high school. Went to Parkside, graduated with a degree in art and with an emphasis in ceramics and sculpture. And then moved to Massachusetts to study with a ceramic artist out there and an apprenticeship program. Did that for 2.5 years. Met my wife, married her, then had a baby. Then
Three more?
yeah, then a couple more. But Cape Cod was very expensive to raise a family, so moved back to Kenosha and had 3 more kids. Well, had two more kids, and then we just adopted our daughter in August of 2020. And yeah, I think that's it. And I am a ceramic artist, and I make pottery and other items.
And you also teach here.
I teach here at the Ram.
All right, Mr. Amado, Renee.
Hey, I am René Amado. I'm a photographer. I was born and raised here in Racine, Wisconsin. I did spend a good time down in San Antonio, Texas. And I guess I've been doing art since I was a teenager. I was always drawing and into graffiti and things like that. Got into graphic design, which that eventually led into doing photography as well. I discovered photography when I started taking it more seriously when I was down in Texas, but I guess since I was a teenager, I always kind of, used it here and there, but I never really did anything serious with it. So yeah, I've been doing that for roughly the past 8 years or so. And I've done a variety of artist markets, galleries, and I also teach photography now at Case High School. So, yeah.
Well, good. And we'll kind of come back to this idea of geography in a little bit, because that is kind of a common thread, I think, that we have here. But kind of the next questions are, what led you into becoming an artist? What were your main influences at an early age in your art career? And are they the same now? Are they different? So I'm going to actually, I was going to pick on Renee. You want to start and we'll go this way?
Sure.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So I guess with photography, my father was a photographer and he was more of a hobbyist. He wasn't, he didn't like have a business doing it. And he would do like portraits and weddings for people that we knew. So I was around it, I guess, as a kid. And I used to always look at his photography magazines that he would have around the house. But like I said, I didn't really get into it seriously until much later on. As a teenager, I would go to a lot of lowrider shows. And so I would always want to bring a camera with to go there and take photos. And I still have a lot of those photos at home, actually. But I wasn't really doing anything serious. Those photos they're not all that great. They're just like snapshots from old cheap point and shoot cameras. And then when I was in college, for graphic design, we had some photography that went along with that, and it kind of got me more interested in doing more photography. And it wasn't until like years later where I had a job that was like really stressful and I just kind of needed a way to unwind. So I would just go wander around like downtown San Antonio and just like do street photography. And I just did it more for my enjoyment and for, to relax a little bit. I didn't even really study photography before that. I didn't even really realize that street photography was even a genre or anything like that. I was just, downtown San Antonio was just really interesting to me. So I would just go shoot just because. And so that led to a lot of different opportunities. I started shooting with some graffiti artists I met down there. I started photographing concerts and music festivals. Got a lot of opportunities then for the artist markets and different galleries and things like that. And so it's San Antonio is a very there's a lot of art all around the city. There's murals everywhere. There's a lot of galleries. There's a lot of that going on within the scene. And so I just became friends with a lot of those people, and that really inspired me. And I ended up moving back here in 2017. And since then, I've really just been more focused on that, trying to keep that going here, keep it going in different ways, open up different avenues and channels and things like that within the art world here for different people, bringing different ideas and whatnot. So yeah.
Influences.
Influences. Let's see. So I've always been a maker of sorts, even when it was just playing in the sandbox at home. My dad, when I was little, built a sandbox that was like 20 by 30. It was huge. It was between our neighbors, both of our garages. So it was just a giant playground. And so I learned to get dirty, and I learned to like it. But my grandfather was an artist. He actually worked at Dick Blick for like 35, 40 years, something like that, forever. And he was a printmaker and a painter and a sculptor. He was always doing something. And so and he had a wonderful wood shop, and so did my other grandpa. So we spent a lot of time just making as a child. So I found clay in college on a whim. Somebody that I haven't talked to since, I had one conversation with this guy. He said he loved his ceramics class and I should take it. And I just decided, okay, I'll take it. And then that was it. I took the first class and I was completely hooked, and basically lived at the studio at Parkside for 4 years. Even though I lived at home to save money, my mom would say, "Who are you?" when I'd come home, because I was always in the studio. So yeah, I feel like I've always been making. I've always been working and being observant of what's around me, especially materials. I like to, even just sculpt, make sculptures out in the park, where in the woods, and build dams in the creeks and those kind of things. So always something physical, though. Not much of a painter, but always like manipulating materials for sure. I had to touch it. That's right. That's right.
Martha?
I have a lot of underlying influences. I don't know which ones I should tell you about. I had wonderful art teachers in elementary school, and I used to walk to school. Every morning I would walk to school with my little neighbor friend, Tanae Lode. And my mom would always comment about how Tanae would stop and look at everything along the way to school. And I think I heard that story about 80 times. So I think I owe it all to Tanae Lode, who told me to slow down and look at my surroundings. She gave me a 3-ring binder for one of my birthday presents when I was like 6. I mean, kids were getting toys, but she was very serious. So I've got a little bit of Tanae in my memory. I had wonderful art teachers who I was ultimately able to see at my mom's church. A couple of them had these presentations going on. My art teacher flew around the world in the Concorde. So Mrs. Kufrin was always a delightful teacher, and I think my mom really appreciated her. And then as I was going through school, I was always interested in the art classes, and my mom would always say that I was her artist. And she still carries that keychain I made for her in 8th grade in industrial art. So it's quite old now, but she still carries that. So I think my mom was a big influence in supporting or affirming that I was an artist. I've always been creative. And what led me into the photography thing was probably my Smile Saver kit that I got when I was 13. I still have my first roll of film that I shot with this. And in those early years, you can see that I wasn't very good at taking photographs of people, because I would take too long in setting them up and making sure the the picture was right. And the looks on these faces of these pictures were very discouraging. So I stopped taking pictures of people and started taking pictures of things and objects. And, if I would be on vacation or whatnot. I did have a very good friend in Chicago who was thrilled with my photographs whenever we would go do something. She'd say, Mark, these photographs are so good. You should sell your photographs. So I owe a lot to Lisa too. Lisa was a big positive influence on me. And I don't know, I'm a positive person, and I'm interested in exploring and looking around like Tanae taught me to do. And I just can't stop seeing. You just see, I see and see and see and see and see. And I kind of drive myself nuts sometimes. So I, have to turn it off. It's a lot of those strong influences that I remember. My father too, my natural father was a photographer. He always had his Nikon around his neck. And so I think photography has just always been a part of my life. And, when your father leaves you in your family, when you're 9, you always kind of harbor this longing or distance for this person who's no longer there. And remembering that camera, I think kind of locked in, one of those chinks. So I don't know, I just have always been interested in it. I'm not a techie gear wise, but I have always been sort of a techie, wanting the camera and the clock radio and all of those new gadgets that would come out at a young age. So the camera is pretty gadgety. I like it.
Mark, please.
Like Nate, I also liked making things. That was always my favorite thing to do. I remember as a kid just sitting around or laying around thinking, what can I make? What can I make? What can I make? And I always liked materials, putting things together. I'd make robots out of cans. If there was some wood around, I'd try to make a boat, bring it to the water. And of course it would sink, but I would do things like that. Any materials I could find. I always liked working with. And in school, yes, as you mentioned, art was my favorite subject. And I had some teachers who were influential. I guess their enthusiasm for art just wore off on me. And by the time I was in college, I realized that you could attach art to almost any subject. So all the subjects I was interested in, or the few, I eventually realized, hey, this subject matter could come into my art. And that meant a lot to me. I felt like I could accomplish, a lot of things through the realm of art. And I wasn't as interested in other subjects anyway. I mean, I was a bit, but when it came to trying to flesh out an idea in art, that was always more exciting to me. And yeah, also like Nate said, the physicality of the material was always important. Even though I would often start with ideas, it was somehow bringing that idea, into the realm of a physical object. And I also like doing stuff that involved sculptural work and painting together, and probably because some of my first work was in ceramics. I was also early on influenced by musicians. Through them, I realized that there were also many different ways that you could be creative. Music was a way that you could talk about a lot of different things in the world. And people like Lou Reed, David Bowie, and Leonard Cohen, I listened to and I was influenced by them. And I realized that art could have so many characteristics. It could be done in so many different ways. It could be funny, it could be dark, mysterious. And then by the time I got to New York, there was just so much art going on, and just hanging out with artists, exhibiting with artists, seeing their work. They were always huge influences for me. And also my wife, Margaret Clark, the artist, she's a big influence, and we have constant interchange of ideas.
Interesting. I mean, it's fascinating how family seems to be a common thread here too, right? In like, your environment and just what you're surrounded by too. Because I guess I imagined everybody answering this question with a couple famous artists, right? Like, oh, he's always influenced by the work of,
I think-
Degas or, so I'm gonna go on script for a minute. And I do want you to just shout out one artist that, people might know, that really influenced your work now, early on, whenever. So Mark, I'm gonna.
Can I name more than one?
Yeah, do a list.
I have several. I mean, some who I worked with and some from the past, but I don't know how known these people are, but Kiki Smith, Laurie Anderson, Yoko Ono, David Wajarnowitz, Robert Longo, Jasper Johns, Francis Picabia, Edvard Munch, and El Greco, to name a few.
That's
All for different reasons too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're very different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Martha, is there one or two that just come
No,
to your mind?
none.
She's an independent woman.
I have to say it's probably Georgia O'Keeffe and Alfred Stieglitz. Mostly Georgia O'Keeffe. I read a really wonderful book about her right after graduating from school, and that really opened, the world of Georgia to me. And I do like her treatment of color. So I think name wise, that would be the two. Okay, done.
Names.
The two that come off the top of my head are Constantine Brancusi. I really loved his use of form and material and surface treatment, even though everything that he does is really smooth and shiny, the way he gets it that way, I've always really appreciated. And then I've always really loved Mark Rothko's work, and just his use of color and pattern and using the canvas for things other than representation, I guess. And I think my grandfather, he isn't famous necessarily, unless you roll in Dick Blick circles. But he always had a really great, his work was always so varied. And so I learned really early that you didn't have to be one type of artist. So he was a printmaker, and he was a sculptor, and he was a painter, but he did it all very well. And he had this really great way to sketch. He would just sketch all the time, and his mark making was always just really nice. So, yeah.
So you kind of caught me off guard when you asked that, and I didn't really, I kind of rambled on. I didn't really jump into influences. But I guess coming into photography, I didn't really have that traditional background like some people do of going through like art school and studying it. I didn't know anything about any photographers other than it was later on when I realized that there's an LA-based photographer, Esteban Oriol, who I had been seeing his work since the 90s and always paid attention to it because he worked with a lot of hip hop artists. He did a lot of editorial portraits for different hip hop magazines. And I would always see his photos and they always caught my eye, and I didn't realize who he was. This was the days before the internet, and I had no clue he wasn't until much later. I would see his name here and there, but I never thought about who he was. And yeah, now there's like documentaries on him, and he's got books out, and I own a few of his books. And so yeah, he was like, before I even realized he was an influence, he was a huge influence on me. And then I guess a lot of it too was like, it came from like Source magazines, because I used to look at those all the time. And then like the Lowrider magazines too, where it showed like Hispanic culture. And then like, well, with the Source magazines, they showed a lot of like graffiti culture from New York. And yeah, stuff like that, that really influenced me. That's where I really started looking at photos, I guess, and stuff like that.
Thank you. All right, let me skip the next question, but so a big thing is, what lessons have you learned as an artist that you would want to share with other artists who are maybe beginning their career or struggling to take their career to the next level? What's your sage piece of advice? Mark, do you want me to start with you?
Okay. If I had to say one thing, I guess I would say that there's, if you're going to be an artist, somehow you have to figure out how to make art. And I've often heard or people talk about the problem of not having enough time, space, or materials. But basically, I think that's the whole issue of art. Like, how do you negotiate those things to make art? that's what you have to do. If you can't do that, then you're probably not a good artist.
Uh-oh, now my cover's blown. Well, I would like to say this, that when you, to be a successful artist, okay, so having the talent, the skills and that, I want to talk about bringing it out to the world and being recognized. And because I think everybody dreams about, oh, I'm going to be this famous artist someday. No, you're not. You're not going to be famous, but you might be locally significant. And so I say, get yourself out there. And the way to do that is to enter juried art shows and put your best work out there. And then one thing that was very successful to me was doing art fairs. So I would enter juried art fairs. And, you know, the first one, I'm driving home from this art fair and I was crying. I was just so proud of myself that I actually put myself out there, sold my artwork for the first time. And I just kept going from there. Pretty soon I was doing about 12 art fairs per summer. So I did this real strong for about 5 years. And I built a following and people would come back for more of my work. And it was so encouraging that someone would look over at me and go, you're an artist, you know, not a photographer, but an artist. And, you know, those are the moments where you're like, wow, I'm really doing this. I'm doing what I wanted to do for so long. And here I am. You know, my nephew appeared in one of my first art fairs and he goes, wow, where did this all come from? You know, and my sister and my mom both looked at each other and smiled because they knew I had been building up to this for a long time because they know me the best. You know, I'm not paying attention to it like they would be observing me from a distance. So get yourself out there, enter the juried shows and put your best work out there. That's going to get you one step. And once you start doing this, then it grows and you can see more opportunities as they present themselves. But it's that first step you need to take.
Yeah.
Great. Nate, what's your
Yeah.
good advice?
Ditto.
Ditto and
Done.
double.
No, so I did an apprenticeship instead of going to grad school. And I think that was the biggest decision in my life. And it defined my life because I met my wife while I was on the apprenticeship. But other than that, like I really do say, if you're young and if you have that time, invest in an apprenticeship. It'll be worth its weight in gold. Just spending the time learning from another artist who's already doing it was invaluable. Or find an artist and just shadow them, or just, you know, get them coffee and talk, you know, like anything like that. Just find somebody to talk with that will give you some advice. Also, just start. It's all about gaining momentum. And like Martha said, it's just, you just do that first show and then do the next one and do the next one. I will say, don't ever launch an art business during a pandemic. That was a mistake on my part. It's a little hard to do shows. That was my first, I had 12 shows lined up for 2020. But 2021 was really good. And I highly just get into some juried shows, and you're gonna be rejected, and that's okay. And some people aren't ready for your work, and maybe you need to improve a little. And it's always good to get that feedback, because without it, you won't mature as an artist. So get professional feedback, get people to talk to you, and get in their face about it. And take classes, you know. Like with ceramics, it's a very technical field, and you have to learn a lot. So I had to take a lot of classes, and I had to constantly be searching for answers on how to do something. So yeah, be a learner, I guess I could sum that up, and just be a lifelong learner, because you're always learning something.
But you, Renee, what's your advice?
I think a lot of it goes back to what they say, is to just start. And one thing that I've noticed a lot with different artists that I've known and met and people along the way, and even myself at one point, is there's a lot of people that will do art and kind of do it quietly because they don't think it's good enough or they don't think people will like it or something like that. And stop lying to yourself about that, because this world is so big. There's so many other people out there that are just as weird or just as different as you and will enjoy it. And with the internet and social media and all that, you will find an audience somewhere, even if it isn't in your immediate neighborhood or community. There's somebody out there somewhere in the world who will like it and enjoy it and support you. And so even, you know, if you try to get into these juried shows and the people around here don't like you, there might be somebody somewhere else, and maybe you'll find yourself in another part of the world. Eventually you'll be successful artist. So don't be shy about what you do. Put it out there. Somebody will find it and like it, and just you know, keep going with it. And if you can't necessarily leave the community you're in and people aren't supporting it, just keep going and just, you know, become a leader if you need to. And then, you know, hopefully maybe you'll bring some other people out of the woodwork that, you know, were in that same boat as you. And so, yeah, don't just put your work out there. Don't let that hold you back. All right.
Are you ready?
All right.
Okay. So what challenges have you had to overcome as an artist, in particular gender, social, race issues?
I don't feel like I ever had anything with genders, you know, social or race. I think if anything, it was just that kind of feeling like I was just saying, you know, to put your work out there and kind of feel like you belong somewhere, and like you know, not feeling ashamed or like you have to hide it or like, you know, like I've gone through that, because I feel like people I knew at one point, they saw me doing photography and they were just like, oh, that's cool. And then they just like, you know, do you see that game last night? You know, and they didn't listen to me. You know, they didn't think too deeply into, you know, what I was doing. And so, yeah, overcoming that challenge of like that imposter syndrome sometimes, I think, or maybe that's not the right word, but you know, just not feeling good enough, not feeling like your work is worth anything. You know, you just keep pushing with it and you'll find, you know, your community. Yeah, so just getting people to take you seriously, and then, you know, getting that support behind you, because yeah, a lot of those people that were kind of looking at what I was doing as just a hobby are like, oh, you know, now, you know, they look at what I'm doing. So yeah.
Me, challenges?
Ditto. Yeah, I actually I wrote on here imposter syndrome. That's been a big struggle. Just feeling like I'm an imposter for a long time. Just like they're gonna find me out eventually. You know? But I feel like every artist I've ever talked to feels that way. I think that's just part of our own introspection and our own ability to emote that those inner feelings, just they're always there, especially for when you're trying to like take something that you've made or something you've created and then show it to other people. There's a vulnerability that happens there. So that imposter syndrome was definitely something I had to overcome, and it's really just from getting out there and doing and starting. I feel like once I started to take myself seriously, other people took me seriously. And so, yeah, for sure that. And then I think also just developing a body of work that I was proud of. Because I was kind of dabbling on all these different things, it was really a challenge to not pigeonhole myself, but give myself direction. But that took a long time to develop. But I really like where I'm going now. I really like where this body of work is going. And so I feel like I've gotten over that a little bit anyways.
And do you guys think age has anything to do with it?
I think that as you get older, it definitely is, it's easier to feel that imposter syndrome for sure. Like when you're 20, you know, you're invincible, you can do anything. But when you're 65, it's hard. But I have students who who took every class that I ever offered here at the museum. And now he's showing in galleries all over the state. And he was retired when he started taking classes. So I feel like there isn't really an age limit, but there is definitely a mental fortitude that you need to have in order to keep moving forward and putting yourself out there and putting your work out there. Yeah.
If I can add to like what you were
Yeah.
saying about age, I think, yeah, like what you were saying, that when you're young, it's like, you just feel invincible and it's like, who cares?
Mhm.
And then you start getting older and there's a shift in that attitude, at least with me, where it's like, I'm more comfortable with who I am. So I don't really care,
Right.
but
Yeah, that too.
at the same time, like, as you get older, you also kind of fall out of line with like what's cool or what's, you know what I
You
mean?
can always be cool, Renee.
Exactly. And so like when you enter like with my students, for instance, they're trying to do these different things, and then the stuff that they show me, and it's like stuff that I haven't done or stuff that like I didn't know people were doing, but yet they still look at my work and think that it's cool, and it's just like I look at what they're into and I'm like, I got to find out about this, and they look at me and like, oh wow, he's doing some stuff, so it's kind of weird like how that happens.
Good
Like,
interplay.
yeah. So
Mhm.
And again, that lifelong learning.
Mhm.
Yep.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Martha, challenges, some of your greatest challenges as an artist.
Okay, so that question morphed, right? It morphed.
Challenges you've had to overcome as an artist.
Well, I was preparing for the gender
And
question,
please.
and the gender question, I'm limited sometimes where I can go. Like, I see great things all the time and I'm like, I can't pull over here. This is like a dark alley. I'm not going to stop here and get out and photograph this industrial building that's perfectly lit and just, an amazing shot. I have to drive on. So I miss out on those, going into Detroit and trying to find, a body of work down in there. I've done a lot of this industrial type theme work, industrial color, I call it. And some of those places are, if you notice, they're usually all during the daytime. A lot of it is along the Great Lake region here. So that's a hang up for me. I would like to do that, but I can't. So, I've moved on away from, trying to do dangerous photography. Imposter syndrome. Yeah, I think we all have self-doubt, and you're only as good as your last best award-winning, piece. It's really hard after you do win an award to go, oh God, what am I going to do now? And you really have to challenge yourself to start again, because you get to these different plateaus where you do have to start over again all the time, because you want to keep bettering yourself and you want to better, from what you've done before, and not compare yourself to others. I think a lot of people get stuck in this, looking sideways at what other people are doing, and that's really a disservice. So you really have to, refocus. And that's one thing I really enjoyed about this fellowship was I was the judge. I was looking at what was going to go in this, and nobody else was. And it was a real freedom to me to be able to say, wow, this piece of construction work, this one, I don't know, you're not showing any pictures. This one right here. Oh, this one here. Up.
Right there.
Like down, this one. Yep. I love this picture and I just get such a wonderful feeling from it, but I don't care if anybody else likes it. I love it. And so that's what I found going through this, putting together what I was going to put into this show and produce. And so anyway, I didn't have to worry about being better than my last award-winning photograph. And that was really great. If I'm saying too much, not enough. I'm not an imposter.
Says who? All right, Mark, how about some of your greatest challenges?
Challenges, well,
Yeah.
I think one challenge is keeping my glasses on without them getting steamed. again, similar to what's been said, would be flushing out, I'd say flushing out a body of work. Sometimes I'll make a piece and it just seems very odd to me and it just sits. And then I might make another piece related to it. Sometimes it's quite a challenge though, to really understand what that one or two pieces, what's happening to them until I make many more. And once I make many more, then it just becomes more obvious to me, the direction, which qualities are important and where it's going. So, yeah, just fleshing out a body of work is always a challenge, but it's usually fun. It's a fun challenge.
Well, okay, so going back to this whole idea of geography and region, so part of being able to submit artwork to this exhibition is you have to live within a certain corridor. So it's Racine Kenosha, east of I-94 is the geographical region that these artists have to live in. And it's so interesting to me that all four of you are born here in Wisconsin area, right? Left for quite a while or for a bit of time and came back. So that is very fascinating, I think. But what in particular about this region or this, geographical area really influences your work or, practically, theoretically, is there, a main influence from being in this Racine and Kenosha area? And you can say no if there isn't. Parts like that?
Well, practically, it just seems so easy to do things here in Kenosha. I live in Kenosha compared to living in New York. My wife and I had 500 square feet in an apartment in New York for over 30 years. And that's where we lived and made art. Now I have over 5,000 square feet and I can park wherever I want. Theoretically, the difference is I haven't been here long enough. I know when I was young, I used to feel that Kenosha was just a generic town like any other town. But then when I left, I saw that it does have distinctive characteristics. And I'm just starting to get a sense of that. It's real interesting to me. I think, the fact that I was able to do these portraits of friends and family, mostly they're friends and family from Kenosha, I think it's an indication that, yes, there's subject matter here that interests me and I want to pursue it. And also, I think that when you have so many artists moving to the big cities, there's a tendency for them all to be influenced by the same things. When you come to these smaller cities, there's peculiarities that I think are really worth pursuing. So I'm hoping that that's what I can do while I'm here.
Martha?
What was the question?
Oh, it's long.
I don't know, the regional thing, yeah.
So living in this region or, growing up, you're living here, how has it influenced your work? Practically, theoretically?
Okay, well, it's Lake Michigan. So that goes from here all the way up to Door County where I've spent all of my art time. So when I, started getting into this, to the website and the selling and the art fairs and all of that, this was all up into, Door County. And then in 2014, after being up there for 10 years, now I'm down here. And it was very inspiring to me at first, but I'm still left with the source of the artwork, and that's me. So it really is the open spaces of the lake I have found have influenced my abstracts and the open space of those in the negative space. But it really boils down to, for me anyway, is where I am at the time that I find something. I have many photographs that are once in a lifetime situations where I could never recreate that photograph and nobody else could either, because it's usually a human being in it. And there is one photograph of the woman in apartment that's up in my selections that you had. It's this one. This one. So this is what I'm talking about, where why was I here at this exact moment in time in my life to get this photograph of this woman and her cat separated by the brick wall and all of that? So that's a very personal photograph because it's just random out of the blue. It has nothing to do with where we are. It could be anywhere in the whole world. You know, it's what I saw and what I grabbed, you know, I was placed there to photograph that by my higher power. I do a lot of praying when I'm out photographing so that I pray to see. And those days, I have seen some really amazing things. There are other days that, you know, you're just zipping around and seeing and capturing. But there's something about this area that's real gritty. And I find it's very multicultural in Racine and in Kenosha. And sometimes I feel like I'm in another city and, you know, another part of the world. And I do try to replicate that feeling in my photographs as if I were in another country. Because I really am kind of a homebody with 3 dogs and we don't travel very much. So I have to travel in a different way to present it through my artwork. So I don't know. I've talked enough now. Next.
Neat.
Oh, yeah. I think that this region plays a lot into my work. I have a really great church family, and most of my family is here as well. And so being connected to people and being connected to other potters and stuff like that. I fire wood firing. So I'm literally using the trees around us to make the pots and the sculptures that I'm making. But it also takes 12 people for 7 days to fire a wood kiln. So it takes a village to do that. And then I'm also using local clays for some of my work and experimenting with all the local materials in my work. So yeah, it's kind of all intertwined. It's like a big hodgepodge of everything that is local. And I think teaching here at the museum has been a major influence as well. I realized that I've been teaching here for almost 15 years.
You're lying. You're both 5.
Yeah, right. I instantly felt old when somebody asked me how long I had been teaching here, and I hadn't thought about it. But yeah, I think just interacting with the students and interacting with people who have never done it before, I'm constantly reminded about what my first day was and what they're experiencing I can relate to. And so that influences my work as well, just as I'm in the studio working. And I like to work alongside the students so that they can see me work, but also just to feed off of that creative energy in the room. And so, yeah, being here in this place is really important to me for a lot of those reasons.
So the work that I do is, I mean, I'm documenting cultures around me. I'm documenting events. I'm documenting things. I'm documenting people. And so, yeah, I mean, pretty much wherever I go, it's my surroundings are all in my work. And being here in Racine, I've been here for the last 4 or 5 years, something like that. I feel like there's definitely been a shift in how I do that and what I've been doing. I found myself in different circles. I found myself in different types of events and different types of places. So I have to adapt to that, and I have to change the way I shoot, and I have to change, the way my photos look then. And so, yeah, I very much adapt to where I am and what I'm doing and what's going on around me. And, this is home. And so it's definitely very important to me to capture what goes on here, in the best way I can. And, a lot of my work that I do is between like Milwaukee and Chicago and here. And so, those are communities that I'm very much I also feel like are homes to me. And so, yeah, I just really try to document it the best I can and show it in the best light that I can and try to be as honest and authentic about it as possible.
Thank you. I'm gonna combine these next couple questions. So what made you apply for the fellowship and what were you able to do with the fellowship grants that you might not have been able to do or that you allowed yourself to do maybe? Who wants to start? Should I go in the middle and work?
I can start.
Nate.
Uh,
Nate's just on Nate's piece.
Yeah. So I actually tried to apply last year. And I was down to the deadline and I couldn't figure out how to get Photoshop to get the resolution of photos that I needed in order to submit. So I missed it by an hour. So I reapplied this year. And the money that I got was I spent the most money I've ever spent cash on any transaction in my entire life. I bought a pallet of brick and other supplies that I needed to build a kiln in town. So and it was new brick. It was like big splurge because usually we're using like leftovers from industry or whatever, and I got to buy brand new pristine bricks. I was pretty excited.
All right, let's go over to Martha next.
Well, I mentioned my website before that was 10 years old. So I took the fellowship funds and hired somebody to build me a brand new website. One of the questions on this list is, do you work full-time? I do work full-time again. And so my time is limited and I was pulling my hair out trying to get this website recreated and started again. And so I took the money and gave it to Gary Arndt up at Fox Valley Web Design.
www.
So anyway, and now it's a brand new website and I have to figure out how to work it. Right. So now I'm kind of still where I was, but at least it's brand new because the other one I couldn't even update anymore. So it was a real drag. So I was extremely grateful for the fellowship. I had applied a couple of other times and was a finalist twice. So third time's a charm. Very exciting, very honored to be a part of this. And living in Racine now for 7 years, it was about the right time to decide that I kind of feel more at home now. I think that the fellowship has opened up more relationships and making me feel a little more solid in the art community here.
Wonderful. How about you, Mark? And we'll go to Renee.
I applied for this mostly because I always wanted to exhibit here at Westham or Ram because I was always impressed with the shows that they had for years. So when I came back to this area, that was just one of my goals. And this happens to be, I think, one of the best opportunities. If you're going to be in a show here, this one was great. I was really grateful to be able to do it. The money, it turned out that the first 2 or 3 of these portraits that I did on these picture pages, I had framed by a friend, and we ordered the frames from somewhere, and she did it. And I liked the procedure so much that I ended up using all of the money to pay for more frames. I never had so many pieces framed before, but that's where all my money went.
I think everybody will understand that. And Renee.
So applying for the fellowship, I almost didn't do it. It's kind of like what you were saying, where it was down to the wire. And yeah, it was very much, I'm pretty sure I applied on the last day you could apply. And
You'd be surprised.
Everybody waits till the end.
And it was one of those things that I just kind of was like, whatever, they're not gonna pick me, and I just put my application out there anyway. And yeah, a couple weeks later, whatever it was, a month later, however long it was, that we get that letter. And I remember I kind of put it to the side, and I was just like, at first I was like, I'm not gonna read that right now, just gonna, I'll look at it later. And I looked at it later and I started reading it, and I read that congratulations, and I kind of read past it, and I was like, wait, hold on, what? And I went back to it, I was like, oh, I got it. Yeah, I didn't think I was gonna get it at all. I just applied just because. So yeah, it was pretty awesome to get that letter and see that I got it. And as far as the money goes, well, everything was shut down last year, so that extra cash came in handy at that time. It was very much needed. So yeah, that was.
It is expensive to create art, you know, and I think when we get out there and price our work, it's very difficult to capture that cost back
Yep.
sometimes.
Yeah, no, it's true. So this tends to be about a 1.5-year process. You're alerted usually in March-ish, and then your exhibit is in the following August, September, November, through November. So what was your process like? How much new work did you create? Did this lead you into any other different directions than you normally do? I mean, you kind of already said that a little bit, maybe. But if you want to-
Yeah, for me, I worked in many different directions anyway. So for me, it almost did the opposite. It made me really converge, really focus on one thing. And I actually did over 150 of these pieces. I like doing it. It just really made me stay focused. So I liked that process. The duration was good.
And so all your work was new in this exhibit?
Yes. Yeah, it was a specific body of work done for this. Yeah.
Martha.
I think I've got about 60% new in the show. Panic, I don't know. There was a damper put on, the 2020, which was really, it was kind of like a wet blanket thrown over some of the enthusiasm and the optimism, because I think we got announcements in January that we were selected this last January 2020. Yeah, and then about 6 weeks later, it's like, okay, but you can't go out of your house. So I'm like, what? So for a long time there, I was just, kind of idling and incubating thoughts and thinking and knowing I had another year, that's a long time. I never procrastinated. But I think that really shaped it for a lot of us. You did 150, probably because you weren't going anywhere, right?
True. Yeah.
So that kind of, I think it had an influence on everybody, probably. I don't know. I wanted to drive to Chicago when everything was shut down, but then you can't go because nothing's open. What if you're thirsty or that? There's nowhere to go, so you couldn't go. It's like, oh, that's not really a good idea. So I've kind of lost track of this question.
I think you're doing good. It was just
All right.
the process and,
Yeah, the process. So, I just thought it was really very well organized. And as long as you stuck to your timeline, I thought it was really helpful getting those, submit this now, from
Reminders.
Kendra, right? Submit these now and then submit these then. And then suddenly your show is taking shape. And it's like, okay, wow, I've already done half of it, here we go. So I think that was really very, very helpful to have those timelines and to meet those deadlines.
And I think especially for somebody who is a procrastinator, it does make you focus, right?
Yeah, you have to have that.
Yeah.
And the reminder emails too. So yeah, you do have to be organized and you do have to plan. I don't think you should wait till the last second to pull something like this off. There's, no, there's, production time and supply time. What if you couldn't get your supplies in time or?
How about you, Nate? What was your process like?
Well, everything that I made in the show is new. It was fired over this time. But I I kind of wished it was a little longer. I had a completely different plan for the show. I was going to build the kiln and then fire the kiln. And then all that work that was in the new kiln that I used the money for was going to be in the show. But the deadline to have all the pieces finalized came a lot earlier than I thought. And ceramics is, you need a lot of lead time. So I didn't have the lead time that I needed to do the show that I wanted to do. But I really loved being able to focus and to explore just a single body of work. And I feel like I've got, just on the notes that I've taken from this body of work, I think I've got my next 10 years planned out. I just have to execute now. So
And your work changed. I know your work. And
Yeah.
I could see the change.
yeah, very much so. Yeah, it made a big jump. And I started experimenting with making clay do things you don't normally make clay do. Clay doesn't like to be flat. It doesn't like to be big. I've over this time, I've figured out how to make it flat and how to make it big
And hang it on the wall.
and hang on the wall. My goal is to actually go even bigger. So like I want to go 3 foot by 3 foot, 4 foot by 4 foot, like get really big with it. So, and this was kind of the kickstart that I needed to get going and really pick a direction and just go for it.
Renee, how was the process? Did your work change? Did you make a lot of new work?
Yeah, so the photos that I displayed were for the most part shot last year, other than I think what I had, like it was around 20 photos in the whole display, and I think 2 or 3 of them were from 2019, but everything else was from last year. Coming into the process, I had a whole other idea of what I wanted to do. And yeah, as everything unfolded in 2020, I was just out shooting. I was very much the opposite of what you were saying. I was like, I need to get out. I need to go. And yeah, that put me in the streets. It put me out in the middle of things that were happening. And I just started documenting and shooting everything. And as that all happened, I started seeing it in my head, what I wanted the gallery to be about. And so, yeah, that's what it ended up being. The whole theme of the gallery was 2020. And, what I went through and what I saw and what I shot. And so, yeah, it definitely pushed me into a different direction than what I thought I was going to do.
Mhm.
And yeah, pretty much everything was new.
Well, we are going to be winding down in a minute. I did want to just kind of get everybody's thoughts about, like, if you would recommend this to other artists, and kind of your future thoughts about your art too. So we'll kind of take this last round to kind of speak to that. And then if we have any questions. No? Okay. So Mark, if you just kind of want to talk about like your future, but also if you recommend this.
Oh, yeah, of course I would recommend it to other artists. It's a great opportunity. While I was working on all these pieces, I mentioned that I was trying to stay in a particular format, was relatively small, and putting an image, drawing an image on an existing image. But during that process, many other ideas came to mind, many different ways of doing these pieces, larger with different materials. Maybe it's all done in paint, or maybe part of it's photograph. I photograph an image and then I paint on it. So that's what I plan to do now, is explore venues that this work implied while I was working on it.
Well, absolutely. I think all of the artists in this region should apply for the fellowship. It's an honor, and it frees you up to do something that you've never done before. And that is to create a show. I mean, there's a lot of wall space that you need to fill, or the room size. So yeah, start thinking of your ideas now and apply. I think one thing I noticed, that of my 3 different entries to the fellowship, they were all very different. So I think that's important too, that it would be interesting to see all 3 entries side by side. You'd be amazed at the difference. So somehow this one, caught. I think it was because of the square format that I've been working on, and my abstract photos were a direction that I began when I moved down here. I joined a gallery up in Milwaukee, and it was a contemporary gallery that liked more abstract work. So I'm like, okay, I'll, throw you some abstracts. So as I've been going down this new abstract path, I'm going to continue with that. And I'm also going to try to make them smaller, because I'm in a gallery up in Jacksonport, up in Door County, that doesn't have a lot of wall space. So the items, tend to be smaller. The other thing about smaller is that they're more affordable for people. And so if you want to be an artist, you really need to have different price points for your work, so that you can have a little bit of bread and butter, and then, some other larger pieces that, investors might want to participate in.
Cash
in
flow is
buying.
king.
Cash is king. What'd you say?
Cash flow is king.
Cash flow, yeah, like those art fairs I would do, the note cards I'd sell for $2 a piece. That would a lot of times pay for the fair cost
Yeah,
itself.
yeah.
So you have to have these different, you have to have a business mind as well as, your art mind. And I think there are people out there who will coach you. Renee Phillips, entrepreneur. She's one of my people. So yes, I'm going to continue with my abstracts and doing more and more squares. And I'm excited about that direction. But I won't let go of my individual people either. I like those vignettes, those emotional vignettes that I like to find.
Nate?
Well, I guess I kind of touched on it earlier, but I'm going to go bigger in the future. And I was talking to Bruce Pepich, who's the director of the museum, and he said that I think it was at the opening, and he said the line item on your resume for this fellowship, having this fellowship on your resume is going to be worth more than the money that was given. It's like, so far it's proving itself true. Just having that, having done a fellowship for a museum that I don't think us locals really realize the treasure that the museum is. It's the largest contemporary craft collection in the country, here in Racine. And people drive by it all the time. They don't recognize what's inside, but it really is a treasure, and it's well renowned outside of the region, especially in the clay community. And so having that on a resume is invaluable. And then, yeah, I would definitely recommend it. Don't hesitate. Just apply.
And maybe like even the emerging artists too, like would you recommend doing that as opposed to what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, touching back on the idea of the imposter syndrome, I know I've had some conversations with people after the announcement of who won, and people I know that saw that I won and were congratulating me, and they would say the same thing, like, I thought about applying, but I just didn't. It's, and it's like at first when I got it, I was definitely intimidated, like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? So there was definitely that feeling of wondering if I would be able to, display among, the other winners. And I definitely don't feel that way anymore. And so, yeah, to the other people that I know that may be a bit shy about, applying to something like this, just go for it. Even if, don't worry about whether you get it or not, just go for it, put it out there. It's definitely been a good experience, with the support that you all have given and those reminder emails and keeping everything on track. Yeah, all around, it was definitely a really good experience. As far as the future of my work, anybody that was looking at what I was doing last year saw that I was doing a lot of building, with building custom frames for photos and things like that. And so I do have some more ideas in mind of what I want to do next and where things I want to display and gallery ideas and whatnot. And they're definitely going to be, I don't want to go too much into detail, but it's definitely going to be more than just a photograph. So,
Hmm.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you all so much for being here, for participating, for applying for the fellowship in the first place. I want to remind everybody that each of their exhibitions runs through November 27th. You're open Wednesday through Saturday, 12 to 4. Please come see these wonderful exhibitions. And I think you'll learn a lot. You'll be really inspired by their work. And another reminder to please apply for the upside down card here, the fellowship next round, which the deadline is sometime in January 17th. So
Apply now.
Apply now. Don't wait till
Don't wait till the last minute.
And again, as Martha said, if you applied before and you didn't make it, doesn't mean you won't make it this year, right?
Right.
Keep applying. We've had several of the fellows over the last couple of years who applied more than once and took 1 or 2 times to get in. So please apply and
Don't log off.
and
I do have a question. It's like, and actually, I think I know the answer, but I hate to say it.
there's a question on the floor.
If my art studio is in Racine, but I live in South Milwaukee, would I qualify?
I do not think so, but that is a good question. Why don't you email that to somebody at RAM?
Kendra.
Email,
Kendra,
Kendra.
KVOELZ@ramart.org. She would be the best one to answer that. Pretty sure the answer is no, but you never know. So again, thanks to the Osborne and Sekich Family Foundation for supporting this, for helping us, get this started. It's a wonderful, wonderful program that we do for local artists, and we're really proud to host wonderful artists like these guys at our museum, which is celebrating its 80th birthday next week.
Woo!
Thank you.
And
Click.
scene.
And close the screen.